You've been a part of so many memorable roles over the years, and I just wanted to know what inspired you to become an actor.
Well, aside from having a sort of a sense that there was nothing else I was going to be competent doing, I just, when I was in my early teens at 12, 13, or as I was growing out of adolescence, I had a sense that, when I was in awkward situations, I'd find, and I wasn't very communicative, I didn't talk much, but I got the sense that if I amused people, I'd be safe. And so I started finding, and I didn't even think about it. I mean, it wasn't anything that went on in my head to any extent, but I just sensed that if I felt I was in a threatening situation, and whoever was threatening, I could amuse, I wasn't threatened anymore. So I guess somewhere in there, I started getting the idea that maybe I could do the same thing on the stage in some sort of fashion. And that's about all I'm going to say about that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I know it's impossible to imagine Back to the Future 4 without Michael J. Fox, but have you ever read a script that you actually liked for Back to the Future 4, and what was the plot like? Oh.
I haven't seen one. And the only people who would write a fourth one would be the people who wrote the first three, and I don't think they're doing it. I think the three was the finale, the end. Except for the game, which I hope you'll all go out tonight, so that there'll be more.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I feel very strange behind this table, but be that as it may, time and the hour runs through the roughest day. Yes.
I'm curious whether One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was in any way a special preparatory aid for Back to the Future.
I didn't quite, whether One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was...
Whether One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, your work in that, had any special role in helping you prepare to be Doc Brown?
No, I don't think so. It was my first film, and I've been trying to get into film for a long time with no success. I just was a washout every time I went up. All the interviews and auditions I did for, I didn't even do auditions for films, but I went up many times and with no success whatsoever. And then they came along, and I began to get the feeling, because some stage actors don't make the transition to film well. They're great on stage, but somehow they don't communicate well on film, and I thought perhaps that was my case. And then they came to town and set up auditions for Cuckoo's Nest, and somebody who had some kind of faith in me sent me up, and it clicked, and I did the film. But for the first few weeks on the film, I was always expecting the director to tap me on the shoulder and said, "Chris, I'm sorry. This isn't working out." But that didn't happen, so. But I didn't, there was not really any connection, I don't feel, except it got my film career going. And that's the end of that story.
Hi.
Hi.
Clue, for my money, has one of the greatest comic ensembles of any film I can think of.
Wait, which one?
Clue.
Right.
And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what it was like on the set.
It was that. It was a wonderful ensemble. They had such wonderful cast put together for that. Everybody was so well cast, and they had a good script. And I remember we got together maybe 3 weeks before it shot, before it went before the cameras, just rehearsing. And so it was very well prepared. It was kind of one of my earlier films, so I was honored to be working with a cast that was gathered, and so many people have come up today and yesterday to have pictures signed and remark about how much they love Clue. So it's great that it's, sustained. Yes.
Hi, I loved you as Doc Brown. And I had a question for you. Which was your favorite out of the 3 movies to do?
What was
Which was your favorite out of the 3 movies to do in
My
Back to the Future?
I'm sorry, my favorite.
Out of the 3?
Back to the Futures? 3. It had a romance, and and any of you who know my work overall, you'll notice that there's a real dearth of romantic roles that I've played. So that was a thrill, especially I was with Mary Steenburgen, who I kind of had a crush on for a while. So that was nice. It was a Western, so that meant riding horses, which is always kind of fun, and working on that steam engine. I don't know if any of you have ever been on a steam engine, but they're like a huge wild animal, and they're fascinating and wonderful to experience. And there was something else too. Romance, riding horses, working on the train. I'm leaving something out. Of course, it was a Western, so you got all that stuff going, Yeah, I'll think of it. Yeah.
Was that your real hair in the movie, or was it just a wig?
I didn't hear the question, but I don't know if I like it. What was that again?
Was that your real hair in the movie, or was it just a wig in the Back to the Future movies?
What was the question? Oh, yes or no. In various times when I was back in one of those time travels, it was a wig. And at other times, when I was in a different time zone, it was my own hair. I had pretty long hair myself, and I had my hair is kind of brown, used to be, and so they bleached all the color out and then made it blonde for my younger self. But I wore a wig a lot of the time. Thank you. All right.
What was your favorite part in number 3?
What was the? And number 3, I guess working on that steam engine. I remember that we had a thing where Marty and I chased the train on horseback, kind of galloping along the side, and our characters grab hold of a thing on the side of the train and pull ourselves onto the train, off the horse's back onto the train. And we were told that, it was that the stuntman would do that shot. We wouldn't be doing that ourselves. And I remember once, during one of the take, chasing the train, and I got right up close to it, and I so wanted to reach out and grab and pull myself on, which I didn't do. And I still kind of regret that I didn't. But, it could have been a calamity if it had worked out. Another moment having to do with the train, Marty and I were on top of one of the trains, and these trains swayed a lot. You didn't notice it so much when you were down closer to the ground, but up on top, they just kind of did this. And Marty and I were on top during some scene, and we both, it jiggled a little funny for a moment. We both felt ourselves about to fall off. And we looked into each other's eyes, and there was, good, you might call it a real expression of terror from both of us. And then we went on, and we lived to tell about it. So, next.
Hi.
Hi.
So you've played so many of my favorite roles from growing up, and I was wondering, of all the roles that you've ever played, which was your favorite and why?
Gee. I tell you, one of my favorites was Uncle Fester. Yeah. There's a magazine called The New Yorker, and Charles Addams, who originated the Addams family, there was every week a cartoon by Charles Addams in the magazine, which was always around the house. And Uncle Fester was, you know, from adolescence, was my favorite. I mean, he was so mischievous and slightly demonic and evil and all those things. And I just, you know, he just totally intrigued me. And then one day, some 30, 40 years later, I got a call to play Uncle Fester, and I was rather stunned because I don't look anything like him. Uncle Fester is a roly-poly guy with a round head and all that. And I just didn't see how that was going to work, but eventually with makeup and costume and walking around with knees bent under that cloak and everything, it worked out. But I just love the opportunity, having grown up with him, to be able to actually do it on the screen. It was a real kick in the ass.
This question is about Roger Rabbit. You know, technology changes so much over the years, and so if a movie like Roger Rabbit was made today, they may use some other technology like performance capture. Because of the year that it was made, looking back now, was there anything interesting about the process, specifically you guys interacting with cartoon characters that may even be funny now when you look at how they would probably do that today? Is there anything notable or funny about that, the interaction, the process you used to interact between the cartoon characters in that movie?
Yeah, they made dummies of all the cartoons, of Roger Rabbit. And Roger Rabbit, they made this dummy Roger Rabbit, which stood about that high, and it had real weight. I mean, you had to, you know, use muscle to play with it. And there was people on the set, mime or mimist, or what do you call them, pantomists or whatever, that would teach us to practice and use, you know, like it was, you know, because in the shot there's nothing there. But we learned what muscles we used playing with a dummy. And yeah, and we just would practice that a lot and then shoot it without the dummy and go on from there. An interesting thing, like you say, today all that is technically done. Most of the film was shot in London, and there was this big kind of warehouse. And on each floor, it was like some kind of a cult society. On each floor were all, you know, cartoon artists from all over the world, and each had their own kind of cubicle, and each painted, you know, on one particular aspect of one frame, the old-fashioned way, the way the original Disney movies were done. And it was a fascinating place because these artists lived in that building, literally. I mean, I don't think they ever left. And there was strewn about all, you know, cartons of Chinese food and junk and beer and smoke, and it was kind of a hellhole, you know. And all these strange people from Japan, from India, United States, everywhere had been gathered to create the cartoons, you know, the visuals. And it was an extraordinary thing to see, which I may never see again.
Very cool. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.